back on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO. Joining us on the phones right now, Republican strategist, Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you today?
Doing great, Chad. How are you doing this morning?
Doing great. It's the first day of early voting here in Texas, and looks like across the state you have some people lining up and voting already. And Matt, how do you feel about the way the election is going just weeks away from the November 3rd date?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, that 10-day period that surrounded the first presidential debate and President Trump contracting COVID and the way the White House handled that, that was kind of a recent low, I think. I think Biden gained ground. You saw that in some of the national polling, which I don't totally buy, but directionally I think is important. It feels to me like in the last 3 or 4 days, things have started to move back in President Trump's direction. He was back on the campaign trail in Florida last night. He's gotten a clean bill of health from his doctors. You have now day 2 of the Senate Judiciary Committee confirmation hearings for Amy Coney Barrett, which is going, I think, very well. And even the Democrats, I think, are really striking out in finding anything that would create a problem. Although I imagine next week they'll drag something out that they say is horrendous about her to try to delay this. But look, Trump's behind. There's no question. How much he's behind and whether he can still win, I think, is a huge open question right now. I would probably put it at like 55%, Biden wins, 45% Trump wins. I think it's close. I think it could go either way. Depends a lot on, who turns out. And Trump's base, look, Trump has some advantages, I think, that are not fully appreciated. Number one, he's got more enthusiasm among his supporters, and that matters. Number two, he's running a more data-driven and ground game-focused campaign. Biden's campaign didn't even start knocking doors till 2 weeks ago. The Trump campaign has knocked millions and millions of doors, made even more phone calls. That's going to make a difference. And then I think these issues are starting to move back in his direction on the Supreme Court, on the economy, et cetera. The issues are getting back to an area where he's going to have more of an advantage. So, we'll see. I would just add that Trump's campaign, I think, has built up a massive data advantage over the last 4 years as well. These rallies are not just to make the president feel good. They collect tens of thousands of data points for voters. And after every one of these events, either Brad Parscale, when he was in his role, or now the RNC chair, Ronna McDaniel, puts out the data. And generally speaking, 15-20% are Democrats. You have lots of minorities there. You have people who didn't vote in 2016 that show up. They're collecting data from those rallies, and they're trying to turn those people out. So there are some reasons why Trump could do this. He has a certain but narrow path to re-election. Whether he can do it by, holding Florida, by holding Arizona, by winning those Midwestern states again, perhaps Pennsylvania, perhaps Wisconsin, that's going to be, the big question mark.
Yeah, Matt, I see a lot of these stories out that Democrats are winning the money war, whereas early on in this thing, it seemed as though Trump was doing very, very well and the Republicans raising money. It seems to have flipped, at least according to a few stories out there. How worried are you about that? How worried should the party be about that going into the election?
Yeah, I mean, Trump had an advantage when it was him versus, 5 or 6 viable candidates nationally. When the party unified behind Biden, it changed things. And now the party is fully unified. And I would say Biden has overtaken Trump financially. Now, that's not to say that that's going to be decisive. I mean, Trump has far more resources and is running a far better campaign this time than he did 4 years ago. So I don't think it's going to be a question of money, although the Dems are swamping the Republicans financially. I think it's in a range where, that's not probably going to be the deciding factor. But, yeah, on the airwaves, there's no question the Democrats are massively outspending the Republicans. And that's true down ballot as well. And they've done that through this Act Blue platform that is just incredibly powerful.
Yeah. I know you're part of a communications team that is helping out the nomination with Amy Coney Barrett. I know yesterday was kind of it was that awkward deal where Amy Coney Barrett just has to stay seated while every senator says something about her. And of course, a lot of the Democrat senators chose to talk about other things and not the U.S. Supreme Court. But how do you think yesterday went? And so far this morning, how do you think it's going for Amy Coney Barrett?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. I mean, they're really not laying a glove on her. I'm not even sure they're trying. If you remember, whatever that was 2 years ago, the distinction between the way they went after Kavanaugh and what they're doing now is pretty striking. And again, I do expect they will dust something off next week after the hearings are over and try to delay this, whether it has to do with her Catholic faith or something else. Who knows? But look, yesterday I thought was a good day. The Dems did, have this coordinated effort where they were showing photos of people who were relying on the ACA. Every single one of them did it. But I think when she made her introduction to the country in her opening statement, I thought it was really powerful and really quite something I think a lot of people could connect with. She explained her family and her background and her faith and how she looks at the law, and she did it all in a very humble way that I think it was engaging. And so, look, she's facing the fire now. She's faced Feinstein and Leahy so far. She's got more Democrats to go. It's going to be a long hearing today, and she'll have a long day tomorrow. But at that point, it's basically over because it's pretty clear the Republicans have the votes. Republicans are sticking together. She's an incredibly well-qualified nominee, and she's going to be confirmed, I believe, before Halloween here in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, that'll be a good thing. Matt, tell folks how they can sign up for your newsletter and also hear your podcast.
Yeah, the newsletter is called Must Read Texas. We take all the top news from around the state, deliver it to inboxes by 9 a.m. each weekday morning. Saves you time and makes you smarter. Make sure you're not missing any news. You can check it out at mustreadtexas.com. The podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's available in the iTunes Store, on Google Play, on Stitcher, and on Spotify. Most recent episode is with Mark Lauder from the Trump campaign, former vice presidential press secretary for Vice President Pence. We talk about the VP debate and the campaign going forward.
All right, very good. Matt, as always, appreciate your time. We'll visit with you next week.
Thanks a lot.
That's Matt Mackowiak, Republican strategist, here on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk KFYO.